Hello, everyone. Welcome to Self-Directed 101. We started a little bit earlier to give some people some time to trickle in and connect, but we have a great presentation for you today, so I'm excited to get started. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. And like I said, we'll get started very shortly. That should be enough time, and I'll kick things off. So welcome again to Camo Plan Self-Directed 101. We host these weekly live at our office in Ambler, Pennsylvania. We like to do these to allow people who are interested in learning about the basics of self-direction join us, ask questions while we go over a few slides. My name is William Mucker. I'm a client executive with Camo Plan. If at any point you have any questions, please use the chat and Q&A function to ask your questions. I'll be more than happy to stop the presentation and review your questions with you. So without further ado, we'll get started. We do have a brief disclosure to go through. Everything in today's presentation is strictly for educational purposes. Camo Plan is a neutral third-party administrator of self-directed IRAs. We are not attorneys, CPAs, or financial advisors, and we can't give any advice in any of those fields. But when it comes to a time where you do need advice in those fields, you're more than welcome to bring in your team of professionals to ensure that the process is structured based off of their advice. We help facilitate the transactions into these investments, keep record of those transactions for the IRS, and report to the IRS at the end of every year. Excuse me. So some things we'll go over today are basics about self-direction, what types of account can be self-directed, what does self-directed mean, what different type of investments you can make, what investments you cannot make, how the process works, and a few tax considerations to keep in mind and talk over with your tax professional when you do decide to get started. So what is a self-directed IRA or 401k? So self-directed is just an adjective. All of the accounts at Camo Plan are self-directed. You may go to one of the bigger custodians like Fidelity or Schwab or Vanguard, and they may tell you have a self-directed IRA, but when they say self-directed, they mean they have a list that you can direct your retirement funds into anything off of that list. With a truly self-directed IRA like the ones offered at Camo Plan, we don't have a list. You find the investment that is right for you. We'll facilitate that transaction into that investment. So self-directed is just an adjective. There are different types of accounts that can be self-directed that we'll go over in just a few slides. This is a quote from one of our clients: investing in what you know, understand, and can control versus using hope as your strategy. Rather than being tied up in the casino of Wall Street, a lot of people like to self-direct their investments, do alternative investments, a little bit more tangible assets like real estate and other options that, again, we'll go over in a minute. So that's why a lot of people come to us because they're tired of Wall Street and publicly traded assets, and they want to diversify a little bit or change it up entirely. So what types of accounts can be self-directed? So you have two different types of buckets that you can look at it through. You have your tax-deferred bucket and your tax-free bucket. Tax-deferred means that you're not paying taxes on the front end, and they could potentially be tax deductible. However, years down the line, when you go about it and take a distribution from that account, you'll be taxed on the amount that you have distributed. That includes your initial contributions and your earnings in that account. On the other hand, it's the exact opposite. So on the tax-free side, you're taxed on the front end on your contributions, and then years down the line when you're of an eligible age to take that distribution, everything, including the earnings that you take out, are tax-free. So in your tax-deferred bucket, you have the different types of accounts like the traditional IRA. Spousal IRAs can also be Roth IRAs or tax-free IRAs. Spousal just means if you have a working spouse and a non-working spouse, the working spouse can contribute on behalf of the non-working spouse. And it operates the same way as an ordinary IRA, excuse me. So again, you have your traditional IRA on your tax-deferred side. Then if you're self-employed or have a small business, you can look at the employer-linked tax-deferred IRAs like the SEP IRA or the Simple IRA. And then you also have your 401k plans and other employer plans that can be tax-deferred. And then on the other side, your tax-free, and you have your Roth IRA, which was named after the senator that founded it, William Roth. They wanted to give people the option to pay their taxes on the front end rather than paying it years down the line. You also have your health savings account, where it's the only account of its type where the contributions can be tax deductible, and then the distributions can be tax free for a qualified medical expense. You have your educational savings accounts, also known as Coverdell's, and then those 401ks that I mentioned earlier on the tax deferred end. You can have Roth portions to them as well. You just want to talk that over with your plan administrator, or when you set up the plan for your own company, you can designate to allow for Roth contributions to that plan. So here's some differences between 401ks and IRAs. The main differences are contribution limits tend to be higher with 401ks unless you have a SEP IRA or simple IRA. They're comparable. UDFI rules do not apply to solo 401ks as they do to self-directed IRAs or IRAs in general. We'll go over UDFI a little bit later in the presentation. UDFI stands for unrelated debt financed income. And then another difference between self-directed IRAs in general, and 401ks is that you can take loans, personal loans from a 401k. It can either be $50,000 or 50% of the account balance, whichever of those two amounts is less. Those are the big differences between 401ks and IRAs. But remember, both of these accounts or types of accounts can be self-directed. Here's a little bit of chart on different avenues of investments and what do you get to keep. If you make $100,000 through these avenues of investments, you have 4 different ways you can look at it. With your salaries or your 1099, you earn $100,000. However, you're paying federal, state, local, Social Security, Medicare, and your employer is also paying taxes. And this may vary depending on where you're located, of course, because every state and different cities have different tax rates. But in this example, you're paying about 40% in taxes to Uncle Sam. So that $100,000, you're only walking away with $60,000. Then you have passive income where you're not paying your employer's not paying taxes. You're not paying that 15.3% tax. So instead of walking away with $60,000, you're paying $25,000 in taxes through that avenue, and you're walking away with $75,000. Then at the bottom, what we're talking about are tax deferred and tax free accounts like these IRAs and Roth IRAs. That $100,000 that you earn stays in that account, $100,000. However, that asterisk next to the tax deferred account, it's because when you go to take that out at the time of distribution, that will be taxed at your current tax bracket. So you're not going to walk away with that $100,000 where you will with that tax-free IRA like the Roth IRA. This is another visual. This is three of those avenues of investments: your taxable income, your tax deferred, and your tax-free income. This is at a 10% rate of return at a 30% tax bracket over 40 years. It's important to note at the very end, you have your light green, your tax deferred, and your dark green, which is tax-free or your Roth IRA. Both of those two accounts earn $2.2 million, whereas your W-2 salary, you only ended up with $700,000 off of that $50,000 initial investment. However, when you took that distribution from your tax deferred or that bar in light green, you paid $700,000 just in taxes, and you're only walking away with $1.5 million, where in the Roth, you're walking away with $2.2 million. So you can see why I'm a little bit partial to the Roth IRAs. They're a great avenue or vehicle for these types of alternative investments or investments in general. Now we get to one of the biggest factors when it comes into self-direction, and a lot of questions get asked when we talk about what types of investments you can make out of the account. So what our clients invest into every day, these are among our most popular investments, and we'll talk about them a little bit more in depth in the future slides. We have real estate, we have private lending via notes and mortgages, privately traded companies via private placements, precious metals like gold, silver, platinum, and then other investments. I've seen people who have bought sheep, sold the wool, invested into trees, sold the fruit, buy bees, sell honey. The options are pretty wide, and we'll go into these a little bit more in these next few slides. So to talk about real estate a little bit more in depth, your IRA can be a landlord. Your IRA can own property. It can rent out property and collect rental income. It can buy a plot of land. It doesn't have to be residential. It could be commercial. And then you can also invest into not companies. You can invest in companies overseas, but you can also invest in properties overseas You just need to be aware of that foreign. Um, there's foreign rules when it comes to real estate, and the country needs to recognize the U.S. LLC as an investor. Another type of investment category that clients like to use is your IRA can also be a bank. It can be a lender on notes. You can secure the notes in your IRA to properties via mortgages. You don't have to originate the note. Your IRA can purchase notes on the secondary market. They can be secured and unsecured, like I said. They can be convertible notes where the terms of the note convert into shares of a company at a later date, depending on the terms. Again, this can all be done out of your IRA or your 401k through a CAMA plan or a self-directed IRA custodian like us. Probably the most common investment I see come through CAMA plan because it's so passive is privately traded companies. So before Apple or Alphabet or Amazon went public, you wouldn't be able to invest through them on the stock market. You would have to invest into them through what's called a private placement, where you're purchasing shares of the company before it's listed publicly on the exchange. You can invest into LLCs, LPs, trusts, joint ventures, settlements, investment clubs, hedge funds. All of these can be done through your self-directed IRA, and we'll go over the process for each of these investments on our process slide as well. Another thing we talked about a little bit earlier is precious metals. Your IRA can invest into precious metals to diversify your portfolio, your retirement portfolio. It can hold gold, silver, palladium, platinum, bullion. There's something called the precious metals composite, which is a combination of each of those metals that I stated earlier. It can also own certain coins like silver American Eagles and options along those lines. You can't personally hold those metals at your house. It has to be stored at a depository because you're not the one who owns the metals. Your IRA does. It's a separate entity from yourself, similar to a trust. But with an account of CAMA plan, we would set up an account for you at a depository that would hold those metals in the name of your IRA. Now, what can't you invest into with a self-directed IRA? So the main thing that the IRS doesn't want you having in your IRA are hard to value assets. That mainly falls under collectibles and life insurance. Somebody can throw paint on a canvas and say it's worth $2 million, where somebody else can say it's not even worth $200. They're hard to value assets that the IRS doesn't want you owning in your IRA. You can also see that it mentions metals and gems are prohibited investments. However, there is an exception for the metals that I stated in the previous slide for U.S. government minted gold and silver eagles, gold and palladium and silver bullions, depending on the quality and how they're minted. Another thing prohibited through transactions out of IRAs, retirement accounts in general, not just self-directed IRAs. Again, like I said in the beginning of the presentation, self-directed is just an adjective. All of the rules that apply to your IRA at Schwab or Fidelity or TD Ameritrade apply to the IRAs here. Contributions, distributions, investments that can be made and cannot be made. So the IRS doesn't allow for self-dealing or personal use when it comes to alternative investments or any investments out of an IRA. So if your IRA owns a property, you can't live in that property. You can't work on that property. You cannot receive or provide a direct benefit to the IRA and its investments. It has to be strictly for investment purposes, and you can't be receiving any of these benefits. Alongside you, there are a number of disqualified persons in addition to yourself that are as well prohibited from receiving direct benefit to the IRA and its investments, or receiving a direct benefit from the IRA as an investment. So anybody in blue in this chart are prohibited persons. Anybody in green are okay. So it's mainly people of lineal ascent or descent of you, including any entity that you or those people own 50% or more of or have managing power, that are prohibited from receiving or providing these benefits. So parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, and any entity that they own 50% or more of are prohibited from receiving or providing those benefits to the account. So if your IRA owns a property, your child cannot live in that property. Even if your child's paying rent, that's a prohibited transaction. Your IRA cannot lend to these people at all either, nor can they invest into any of the business that these people own as well. Businesses that they may own as well. Excuse me. So how does the process work? It's pretty quick and easy. This entire process, a lot of this stuff is behind the scenes. On average, I tell people from the date they open the account to the date they make their first investment to expect on average about 3 weeks, but there are a number of factors that go into that we'll talk about. To open the account takes about 15 minutes. You can do it online from our website. You can even have a representative like myself walk you through the application. Then to fund the account, it depends on what type of account you're funding it from. So if it's coming from an employer plan into an IRA with us, then that's going to be a rollover where you're going to initiate that on your own. If it's coming from another IRA, we can request those funds on your behalf, provided the proper forms. On average, that process takes about 2 weeks. We process everything on our end within 2 business days of receiving paperwork in good order. But the other custodian will have their own processing timelines, and depending on whether they're sending a check or wire, that could also vary. But we'll help you prepare for those timelines and walk you through the funding process as well. Once the account's been funded, you'll receive an email notification from Camaplan. At that point, you can start working on identifying the investment that you want to make out of your IRA. Depending on the investment that you want to make, it'll have different supporting documents that you'll provide alongside with our form, which is our Camaplan Asset Purchase Directive, which is just our direction of investment form that tells us what you're investing in, how much you're sending, how you'd like it sent, and where we're sending it. If you're purchasing a property, you'll have an agreement of sale. If you're lending money, you'll have a promissory note. If you're investing in a privately traded company, you'll have a subscription agreement, and all of those documents, the investor on those documents, whether it be a purchaser, a lender, or a shareholder, will be the IRA. Like I said earlier, is a separate entity from you, similar to a trust. So when you're investing through Camaplan, the way to look is something along the lines of Camaplan FBO, which stands for benefit of your name, IRA or Roth IRA or whatever type of account you have with us. You'll initial next to the signature line for that investment. That lets us know that you've read and approved of that agreement or that investment itself. Send that into us. We'll sign on behalf of the IRA's third-party administrator. And then within 2 business days of receiving those forms in good order, we'll send the funds to your investment provider. And then your IRA will collect the income from that investment, whether it be rental income, interest and principal payments, or dividends from the investment that you made. And then you can just rinse and repeat, make new investments, transfer it back out to another custodian in between deals, whatever you choose. Again, we'll process that request within 2 business days of receiving the forms in good order. Now, why do you need us? So you can view us as the vanguard of your self-directed IRA or your alternative investment. The IRS requires that you have a third party to have an IRA and to report to the IRS at the end of every year, and that's what we do. We're a neutral third party. We don't give any advice. However, we are a part of your core team of professionals to make sure that everything's structured based off the advice of your professionals. So bring in your CPAs, your attorneys, your advisors. We're more than happy to speak with them and make sure that we're all on the same page. So yeah, that's why you need us. We would do the record keeping and report to the IRS at the end of every year. Some frequently asked questions. We did go over some of these in some of the slides prior, but I'll go over those in a little bit more detail. So we went over the timeline to open the account. It's on average to open the account, it's about 15 minutes. Now to fund the account could take up to 2 weeks or maybe a little bit longer, but it could be much quicker than that depending on the number of factors that we went over earlier. However, we process everything on our end within 2 business days from receiving paperwork in good order. How do you make the investment through a self-directed IRA? We'll have that asset purchase directive, which is a Camaplan form, and then the supporting documents for your specific investment. You'll make sure that the investing entity is the IRA, which, like I said earlier, is something along the lines of Camaplan FBO, which stands for benefit of your name, IRA, or Roth IRA, or SEP IRA, whatever type of account you have with us. Send that into us with your initials. We'll sign on behalf of the IRA and then send the funds based off your instructions on that asset purchase directive to the investment provider, whether that be the borrower, the company you're purchasing shares of, or the title company or realtor that you're purchasing the property from. Who signs the paperwork when I invest? Like I said, we sign on behalf of the IRA's third-party administrator of the IRA. Can I use my IRA for a down payment of property I want to own personally? This is one of the most common questions I get. No, you cannot use it strictly for a down payment that you want to own personally. whatever percentage the IRA owns of the property is percentage of all expenses it can pay for that property. So if you want to pay 100% of the down payment with the IRA is going to be 100% owner of the property. If you and it'll be entitled to 100% of all return from the property and responsible for 100% of all expenses. So down payment, purchase price, utility bills, renovations, any expenses would have to come 100% out of the IRA, and 100% of all return will be returned to that IRA throughout the duration of that investment. Can my IRA receive a loan to purchase a property? You can, however, it wouldn't be through one of your traditional mortgages or loans. It would be through what's called a non-recourse loan. For those who are unfamiliar with non-recourse loans, the loan isn't being made to you personally, so you can't personally guarantee it, as well as the only recourse the lender has if the IRA were to default on a payment is to go after usually the property that the loan was made to specifically. They can't go into your other accounts at Cama Plan. They can't go into your retirement accounts outside of Cama Plan, and they can't go after your personal holdings. Only whatever is in that specific IRA the loan was made to. And usually with these loans, the requirements are a little bit different from your traditional financing options for just those reasons that we just went over a second ago. Can I manage the property my IRA owns? It depends on what your definition of manage is. You can pick the tenants, you can pick the color of the paint you want to paint the walls, but you can't go in there with a paintbrush and paint them yourselves. That would be sweat equity that you're putting in the property, and that would be considered a prohibited transaction. If your investment has called capital or installment payments, the way it works is on our asset purchase directive. There's a question that asks you what the initial purchase price of the investment will be and what the total purchase price will be over the duration of the investment. You'll tell us how much we're sending initially, and then whenever you have an installment payment on a loan or if you have a capital call for a private placement, then what you'll do is you'll log into your online portal. You'll submit a payment request for the existing assets via your online portal, mark it as additional funding for that investment, attach a copy of the capital call, tell us how you want us to send it and where we'll send it, and those usually get processed within 1 business day from when the request is submitted, assuming everything's in good order, of course. Some tax considerations to go over a little bit. Definitely talk this over with your tax professional if you're thinking about doing these or you think you may run into one of these. These types of taxes, usually IRAs don't pay taxes, but in some instances they do. And usually when I've talked to people that end up paying these taxes through their IRA, they're okay with it because they'd be paying taxes if they did these investments outside of the IRA, and they're still using it to grow their retirement account quicker than the investments they would be making on the stock market or that weren't with these alternative investments. So it really depends on how you structure it and what investment you're making. The 2 types of taxes that could be paid out of an IRA, in the unlikely event that you have to pay them, the 2 types are UBTI and UDFI. So UBTI, also sometimes referred to as UBIT, stands for Unrelated Business Income Tax. That's when the IRS thinks you're running a business out of the IRA. So the 2 main things that could trigger this are flipping properties. Now, what the IRS's definition of a flip, they'll never say. Some people say if you buy one property and hold it for a certain amount of time, you're okay. Some people say if you only do a certain amount in a given year, you're okay. But those people at the IRS definitely talk it over with your tax professional. And another thing that could trigger this UBTI or UBIT tax is developing on undeveloped land. So if your IRA purchases a plot of land, and then you say, hey, I want to build a property on this plot of land, your IRA pays the developer to build on that plot of land, that could trigger the UBIT tax. And again, talk this over with your tax professional. I don't know how much you'd have to pay or at what rate it's paid at. So definitely talk with your tax professional. And then on the flip side, you have the UDFI or unrelated debt financed income. This tax is if you receive one of those non-recourse loans I mentioned earlier to purchase a property out of the IRA, then this would trigger the UDFI tax. If either of these taxes had to be paid out of the IRA, the way you would go about it is, of course, you would talk it over with your tax professional. Your tax professional would file a Form 990T, submit that to Cama Plan. We'd sign on behalf of the IRA and then send the funds to the IRS to pay those taxes based off your CPA's advice. Again, it's not very common that you'll see these taxes out of an IRA, but just some things to keep note of, and some questions that you can raise to your CPA if you want to learn more about them. Just to prove that nothing we said today in this presentation was just pulled out of thin air. These are the publications, the regulations, and private letter rulings and court cases that all this information was pulled from. We didn't make anything of this up. If you want to verify any of these or you have trouble sleeping at night, you can keep these by your bedside. But yeah, everything is strictly for educational purposes. We didn't make any of this up. And if you have any questions, now will be a great time to ask them, as well as you can always call into our office at any time. We're more than happy to speak with you, go over the specific scenario or investment you're looking at making out of your IRA and how you want to fund it. And we'll help make sure it's structured based off your timeline and your wishes and your retirement plans. So if anybody has any questions, we have plenty of time for that now. Please type it into the comments section, or you can also use my contact information here if you don't want to ask it publicly on YouTube or wherever you're watching this. You can always give me a call, shoot me an email, and we can go over it after the fact. So I'll give everybody a few minutes. If they have any questions, type it in the chat now. If nobody has any questions, we'll wrap it up. And then I definitely recommend reaching out to us. I'm always happy to speak to people, get your thoughts on the presentation and go over any of your questions. So yeah, we'll wind down a little bit, give you guys a few minutes to use the Q&A section, and then wrap it up when we're all said and done. I do see we do have a few people in the presentation. So like I said, feel free to take your time, type out your message, or take a picture of this contact information or write it down, and we can talk about it offline if you wish.